We are here to do something very important. We are here to celebrate and learn from our Black youth leadership who are paving the way forward. As I always say, young people are our future, but also our right now. And I'm grateful to be in a role where I can make sure our Black young voices are heard, valued, and that they will always have a seat at the table.
For me, something that was really important to me was trying to find a place that lifts up these leaders so that they can be there, so that the other kids in the grade or in the school see that, there's kids in leadership that, reflect their cultural background or their racial background, so that they feel that they belong as well.
I came from a generation where your mom told you what to do and you did what your mom said do. And then I raised my children the same way, but when them precious grandbabies came along, I wanted to hear their voice, so that's the generation I came from. So when you learn better, you do better, and my grandchildren have a voice.
I learned from teaching the kids, like I would have open mics after school, let the kids get up, and let's be clear, teenagers are not the ideal audience for like self-expression and standing up and being vulnerable in front of other people, right? So it's more about building culture and letting them be able to do what they feel comfortable doing. So some kids do poetry, some kids rap, and a lot of the things that they say are not welcome in the school environment. Right, so those types of things, that provides opportunities for us to speak. It's all about providing opportunity and also training, because then the kids can get up, they can MC, they can do, things at the school and express themselves.
LeBron James, because he's the leader off and on the court. He supports a public elementary school in Akron, Ohio, for at-risk children. I was lucky to go to Akron, Ohio, to the National Super Box Derby many years ago. And I learned that he had always supported families who lived through his family foundation called the I Promise.
Before Rosa Parks, 9 months to be exact, there was a 15-year-old Black girl by the name of Claudette Colvin. And Claudette, who was 15, was actually the first person to not give up her seat and to make a stance against the inequity. What I have now learned as a Black woman reflecting on that experience is that there really isn't an either or. There is space for Rosa Parks and Claudette Colvin to exist. There is ample opportunity for us to lift up both of their names. And it is in that spirit of the both and that as we talk about slaying all of the evil as it pertains to racism and sexism and classism, that I just invite us to do what young people have always done, and that is to lead with courage, but to also lead with compassion.
It's going to take us being a learning community, not a teaching community, right? We all can learn from one another. That's what we need to develop in our community. That's what we're developing in our school right now. We learn as much, if not more, from our young people than they do from us. So when we have to have an open mind, and we have to be willing to understand that they bring those experiences to us. So we have to respect their culture.
It's not just about advocating for Black men who are brutalized by the police, but it's also advocating against gender bias, advocating for Black women, advocating for Black people in the LGBTQ+ community, advocating for Black people with disabilities, advocating for Black people across class lines. It's not just about the rich ones getting more CEO positions and diversity leadership, but it's also about raising people out of poverty and closing the racial wealth gap and doing so many more comprehensive things than just advocating for one community. So I think my biggest push is just to be super comprehensive and inclusive in who we're advocating for and the issues that we're talking about.
You know, there are some things that we don't want to necessarily address because it's a difficult topic, or we have to actually speak on the ugly truth, but we have to rip the Band-Aid off. I think that in these past few months, we've seen the Band-Aid ripped off of so many things that we wanted to shy away from and not necessarily speak about. We don't necessarily have to speak on the tragedy and the turmoil. Like, we've seen so many people have such great accomplishments that it doesn't always have to be the difficulties. It doesn't always have to be the hurt and the just upset and the outrage within our community. We can talk about so many positive things.
You have to know and know your history to know where your greatness comes from, because you move differently when you know that you built something. That means everybody within earshot should have mentors and mentees. Sometimes the mentors are younger than you and sometimes the mentees are older. We have to always show and lift up and put our Black kids and young people and even young adults in proximity to Black success. It's hard to be what you don't see. It's hard to be what's not possible.
Young people are necessary for changing the status quo in this country, pushing for progressive change, and holding our leaders, including me, accountable. To put it simply, they are the future and they will let us know. I am committed to partnering with and supporting a new generation of young Black leaders, and I hope you will all join me in that commitment.